Fiction is a pretty amazing thing. Not only does it entertain, it is a reliable source of enlivenment, occasionally becoming an outlet for recreation following a long day after school or a 9-to-5 office job. For some, it's become an escape, and others an aspiring profession. If I had to mention one remarkable thing about it, it'd be that it takes various forms, capable of innumerable methods as a means of expressing one's creative ideas. Anime has been hailed as one of those mediums, the first of which I found myself resonating with as a young, inexperienced teen. Soon enough, it became a chain reaction, where manga and light novels quickly came after. Even JRPGs and visual novels, although mostly those of the Persona and Danganronpa game catalogs, had managed to join the ranks in due time. Admittedly, it could only be considered and defined as an obsession for me and many, one that grew as time went on. Eventually, it was then I realized it had grown to the extent of becoming a part of my identity. Although an obviously known fact, the possibilities remain endless of fiction, and it's because of it that I gradually developed an undying interest in analyzing the aforementioned mediums and realizing my passion for storytelling. But what exactly are the processes that go into creating fiction? What sort of methods do creators use, such as anime directors, light novel authors, and mangakas use to create the stories we've come to value today? Of course, the answer is anything but singular, and that's exactly the beauty of it. Today, let's discuss it in depth through examining some of my favorite fiction. Feel free to leave a comment mentioning your personal favorites as well.
今とてもいいことを言ったと思うんですけど、確かに僕音楽もキャラクターの一人という言い方はとても今ぴったりきたと言いますか。
Just as the existence of fictional characters make up the entirety of a story, music too is of the same note. Anime director Shinichiro Watanabe, the man behind Samurai Champloo, Cowboy Bebop, Space Dandy, and more critically acclaimed titles, is among few producers of the medium to realize this concept to its maximum and ultimately spark an era of originality. And while Watanabe has proven to value the visual and writing direction of his works, his personality as a director has shown that he places an elevated priority on expressing his musical tastes. Though in my own personal interpretation, the atmospherics and general vibe of his stories. The creative process for Watanabe has always been one not only inspired by his desire to be different, basically an alternative to the norm, but rather forming a distinct musical foundation. It was essentially a necessary element in creating his general narrative formula, one that amalgamates different genres and subgenres into a completely distinct genre of his own. I mean, it's quite evident in the meaning of Champloo in Samurai Champloo, translating into the words to mix or to blend, perhaps signifying the reputable fusion of traditional Edo-era Japan and modern-day hip-hop. Cowboy Bebop can be interpreted as a chaotic mix of jazz, neo-noir, a space western with a tinge of cyberpunk opera. This exemplifies Watanabe's desire in portraying the atmosphere he'd exactly envisioned for each separate title, to the extent that those stories have been regarded as their own separate genres, largely thanks to Watanabe's brilliant musical choices. These choices directly characterize not only the characters within their respective series, but the worlds they live in, worlds that reflect Watanabe's genre-defying genius. But it must be mentioned that Watanabe doesn't overuse his musical visions. There are moments within his works, especially Cowboy Bebop, that utilize silence and real-world sounds as a sort of breathing mechanism that elevates the present tension. It serves as such a great contrast and transition to and from the diverse musical overtones which may potentially become repetitive or overwhelming if not handled correctly, specifically in the timing of it all, which Watanabe has an impeccable sense for. In session 20 of Bebop, labeled as Pyohe Le Fou, there's an action sequence lasting for around 2 minutes, to which the majority of the scenes contain nothing but gunshot echoes, human onomatopoeias, and in general, sounds devoid of background music. I don't know how else to describe it, but not only does it make the scenes more engaging from a viewer's perspective, it also allows the moment to feel more real and genuine, despite the sci-fi elements at play. Especially when considering Spike's odyssey through it all, Session 20 in of itself is nothing short of a profound transition from the past episodes, a harrowing one that is, be it through the subtle sci-fi shift in visual color palette or Spike's highest form of vulnerability yet being portrayed in the midst of what seems to be an unbeatable foe. These elements serve as a foil to his aforementioned depiction as an unbeatable foe himself. In all major narrative departments does this episode reflect Watanabe's diverse directorial capability, a dedicated director that values the present moment and atmosphere above all.
Hello, boy.
The nature of a story's themes remains as the core selling point for garnering my enjoyment. How a story expresses its ideologies, its philosophies, and underlying messages is what either makes or breaks it. Some of my beloved favorites to this day center around themes encapsulating the regainment or the regression of one's humanity. There's even a story, a manga by the name of Homunculus, written by Hideo Yamamoto, which grows to question the very thought of what one's humanity means. What does it mean to be human? What does it mean to live? It's a broad concept, pretentious even to some. Although when a story makes me thoroughly reflect on these questions, that's when I know it's made its mark, for better or worse. As a wise man once said, I'd rather have a story be pretentiously philosophical than the unceasing assembly lines of carbon copy fantasies and seasonals we get today. Masaaki Yuasa's Tatami Galaxy explores this idea through absurdity and the protagonist's gradual succumbment to his worst thoughts as a result of failing to obtain his so-called rose-colored college campus life. Although it's fascinating that one's interpretation of its themes of such a title can be aligned with Miura's acclaimed Berserk, a grimdark fantasy which explores similar emotions but through a completely different narrative, presentation, premise, and journey. This comparison may be considered a stretch to many, although the point is, they both explore the fluctuating nature of one's humanity. A story becomes vastly more compelling when two or more themes collide with each other. Urasawa's Monster is the first that comes to my mind, and potentially to others, Death Note, Berserk, and Vagabond. People often refer to these characters, who are essentially representatives of their tales' themes, as two sides of the same coin. It's these philosophically and thematically charged battles that breathe personality into their stories. It gives them meaning, it provides a purpose to conflict and dialogue, even the premise itself. In general, conflicting perspectives can be found in any form of consumable media, yet what separates them from each other lies within the method of portrayal. From complex mental gymnastics, five-head narrative schemes, and psychological contests of wits, to even the simplest displays of strength, weakness, or mere conversation, there remains a myriad of ways to convey a message. And as viewers bound by subjectivity, We interpret these messages through comprehensive analysis and discussion. A model example of intertwining themes can be found in Yuasa's Ping Pong the Animation, a coming-of-age sports drama revolving around self-discovery. The series explores the fine line between talent, accumulated effort, one's raw passion for the sport, and those who simply had the desire to win more. Seeing these themes interjoined throughout its course ultimately made up for an eye-opening, revelatory finale. Although conflicting perspectives aren't necessarily limited to the establishment of opposing characters, they may also exist within oneself. Protagonists such as Hachiman from Oregairu, Watashi from Tatami Galaxy, Vinland Saga's Thorfinn, or Steins Gate's Okabe are characters who struggle with their own personal conflicting views on life and the decisions they're forced to make. Even Monsters Kenzo Tenma, a series hailed for its oppositional, dualistic contest of philosophies between the protagonist and antagonist, is a character whose personal ideals are tested to the maximum. The mere sight of viewing characters accept, struggle, feel, endure, mature, and overcome amidst conflict or uncertainty isn't solely a potential medium for evoking emotional relatability or correspondence. It showcases genuine evidence of one's humanity.